of you, welcoming you to the webinar of Geography Optional in Direction Institute for IAS. I'm Neetu Singh and I humbly welcome all of you. First and foremost, all those students who have taken interest in taking admissions, I'm highly obliged. And those who are still somewhere in doubt whether they should take geography as their optional or not, I think this webinar is going to help them a lot in their decision making. If I start from the declared result of 2021 UPSC, see don't go in the big list, just see the top 4 rank holders. First goes with history optional, second goes with PSIR, third goes with sociology, and fourth goes with geography. So if I take last few years of the result trend, I can easily justify that number one, humanities, our humanities subject as the optional continues to do very well, and there is no doubt about it. And these subjects, including the subject that I deal in, geography, proves to be the evergreen subject. These are the subjects which we cannot doubt at all as they are performing or they are not performing. To proceed further, I have got the students who are in a doubt because they could not qualify the examination this year. They are still waiting for their marks to be out. But if I just take the last few years of the attempt holders who could not qualify, and they create a doubt among themselves and then think about switching on or off to the other optional. Like I have been preparing optional A for a while, and because for 2 attempts I could not qualify, so I decide that I go to option B because that has been into the list as toppers in particular year's result. Of course, the last call is always yours, but holding the experience of more than 2 decades in this field, my advice always goes against that. Geography as an optional where I can speak more with confidence because I'm dealing with it, should not be considered to be the option that you can change to the other if a year or 2 you could not score. You need to actually think about why you could not score. So this webinar is basically not to give you that there are 20 topics of your syllabus, and these short-term tricks that select the option which has got lesser length of topics in the syllabus, I don't think works. The most important thing that makes us decide on the optional is, of course, our interest, scoring possibility, overlap with general studies, and it has been so much talked about time and again that I don't need to speak about that geography is a lengthy optional, no denial to it. There are 20 hits. Geography has got the major overlap with your general studies. 350 to 360 marks of your general studies is right there in the main. And when I count the prelims in the general studies paper 1, at least 3 topics. Social economic development, environment ecology, biodiversity, climate change, and physical geography of world in India has got its absolute overlap with geography. It is something that is very prominent argument that goes in favor of this optional. I believe that all those who are attending this webinar have decided to take geography as their optional. So in place of giving you the idea of how does it helps you in your preparation, let us try to talk about how to go about with its preparation. It's an integrative discipline. It integrates everything. And when I'm talking about it integrates everything, it is paper 1 and paper 2 integration. It is physical and human geography integration. It is static and contemporary topic integration. That integration should be your key. And you have to understand that you have to eventually showcase your understanding to examiner in terms of written answer. And that writing skill is one of the most prominent requirement. You might be intellectual in brain. You have got beautiful ideas and absolute comprehension of the topics. But if it is not converting into time-bound, effective presentation, content, integrative writing, you are not attaining the desired marks. I hope I'm making sense. So I just take some of the sample cases to make you understand how exactly we try to integrate with terms of the supportive material And the questions, I'm not going much with the sample. We cannot get into that much of the details by default in the webinar, but the idea of this webinar is to give you the understanding that content matter for any optional preparation is by default a must. You cannot compromise on it. In regards to geography, every topic, including I call them hidden topics, are of same importance. You cannot ignore any one of them. And I repeat, any one of them. Selective preparation is the past tense for civil services examination. It has to be all full sum comprehensive. First thing. Second thing, when I'm learning about any particular head, I cannot be in a watertight compartment because none of the topic is in watertight compartment. You have to take up the understanding of the things that are actually overlapping with each other, right? And the nature of question. I have understood the content matter. How do I judge my level of understanding? How do I judge I'm on the right track or not? That is the reason we at our center very strongly insist that writing practice is integral part of preparation. It should not be something called foundation first, building the building later, and then writing practice after this. No, not at all. They all go hand in hand. You have to create foundation to construct out your information, and you have to judge whether you are going on the right track or not. So you have to get onto the writing practice. There is nothing called I'm done with my learning and now I want to write. You have to take writing to your stride. And to prove that point, I have taken some of the sample pages of the class notes that is dictated in the classroom, and I have some questions that have been asked in examination last 2 years, 2019, 2020, 21. You can take up that into account. You don't need to get into much older than that in our sample reference of study. An integration that goes as paper 1 and 2, an integration that goes as physical geography and human geography. I've got excellent examples to justify. So quickly getting on to the screen share. Purposefully utilizing the class notes page to make a point justified, right? So this is about atmospheric moisture, one of the very conventional topics of our climatology. But in place of talking about atmospheric moisture, what I want to do is, I want to take in 2019 main examination, we encountered the question which talked about various kinds of humidity and associated. Now, what is the, if I just count it, I'll say it is one of the very basic topics of climatology. I mean, atmospheric moisture, amount of water vapor present in air is atmospheric moisture. Even if I'm not aware of geography, it's not my parent discipline, then also we are aware of it. But when the question comes like this, where you are supposed to talk about various kinds of humidity, so it comes logical that various kind of humidity I can incorporate the measures. And as you can see in my class notes, if I just scroll it up here, absolute, specific and relative humidity. Grams per cubic meters, grams per kilogram, and amount present carrying a capacity expressed as percentage. Maximum of the answer writing students will fault their answer here. And do I sound correct? That if you have faulted your answer here, you have missed out on the second part of the question. Then how you can expect that you'll get a good marks? You have to justify the associated form. But humidity is amount of moisture present in air. So what should I do with forms? So I show you the flow chart that we normally make. Right here, you just see it. Condensation forms and types. Condensation forms and type can easily be justified as the examples of forms of humidity, right? They can be considered as forms of humidity, barring the exception of at ground. Because at ground forms or types of condensation is where condensed moisture is deposited. They are deposited on ground. And if they are deposited, written right here in the class notes, if they are deposited on ground, they cannot be of air. I hope it makes sense. So when you are writing the second part of the answer, you will be learning writing it as near ground and atmospheric, that is fog and clouds. I think it is making sense. In place of this type of question, if the question would have been straightforward, what is fog? Write about its type. What is cloud? Write about its type. We would have done it. But because it is writing forms of humidity, I need to act intelligent. So you have to be very cautious in framing up the answer. So learning is fundamental to write. But because you have learned doesn't guarantee that you can write. I think that point comes very clear. So writing is integral part. You cannot miss out on writing practice, right? Okay. Then I take up the reference of, I just scroll over. I take up the reference of a question from geomorphology. Climatology and geomorphology are the two topics where not a single year we have missed out with the question. They have been the most consistent player. If I just take up a question, I think that will be the easier point, and that is the reason I have selected this particular page of our class notes. I just want to prove upon it. So the question was, compare and contrast different types of plate boundaries. Now carefully see, I have selected this particular page of our class notes because of this. Average answer writing student will be writing what is plate boundary? The plate boundaries are where the active tectonic plates move in relation to each other. It can be converging, it can be diverging, it can be transverse. So types of plate boundaries, everyone will write is converging, is diverging, and is transverse. Precisely every one of us will be writing. But mind it, when you are comparing and contrast different types of plate boundary, these three that I have just listed in front of you makes example of major types of boundaries. And these are minor ones. You have to include the minor ones that have been roped in the original theory of 1967. Plate tectonic theory in 70s, wherein hotspot volcano and transform boundary both are credited to Tuzo Wilson, very important name when it comes on to geomorphic study. And once you have decided that I'll be writing about comparing and contrasting the different types of plate boundary as major and minor, your answer automatically becomes complete. Is it not that you have understood? Now, how you have understood in the class? Plate tectonic original theory is 67, and then the modification comes up in the 1970s, and I'm learning it that way. Examiner asks limitation of plate tectonic, write about modification, I can write it. But examiner asks compare and contrast between the boundaries. Until unless I have taken the comprehension, integration of the heads that I have learned, I'll miss out on the minor boundaries. My answer will not be to the mark to be competing with any of my competitors. I think it makes sense. I continue to take up another sample case. I have picked up to give representation to physical human geography both, and also Indian perspective of the study. I'm just coming up to the questions. Okay. Right. Biogeography, very commonly talked about table of the interactions which are called biotic interactions. I want to highlight on amensalism. Amensalism is a type of biotic interaction where one species remains neutral and the other has got the detrimental effect on it, right? So amensalism is interactive relation where one is neutral but other has got the detrimental effect. The question that has been asked in examination is, amensalism is a biotic factor that determines the geographic limit of species. Now you start writing your answer with what is amensalism? Yes, it is perfectly done. What is amensalism? It's a biotic relation. Can be counted in the detrimental category, can be counted in the neutral category because one specimen interacting remains neutral. But then how it is a biotic factor that is determining limit of the species? Do I sound correct that you have to integrate here Gauss's principle? And once you take that, you have to take into account the fundamental and realized niche If you have slight understanding of biogeography, you are making sense with me. Otherwise, the heads are technical. If you are not aware of it, do not worry. You will be aware of it very clearly, because do see, I have just randomly selected some of the pages of our class notes. So this is right there in the class notes. So you will be learning it by default. You can take it right here. Okay. So these are part and parcel of the study. It is not that you need to be aware of them before you come to the class. So Gauss's principle of competitive exclusion, competition, can be associated with how a mensurism becomes a biotic factor that can determine the geographical range or geographical limit of a specimen. You create a logical answer. So you are integrating what? You are integrating niche, the concept that was given to us by Grunel. You are integrating principle of competitive exclusion given to us by Gauss, and you are writing answer on a mensurism. I think makes logic. You have to be very cautious in applying your comprehension to write a logical answer. Going further, if I talk about Save Soil campaign is on worldwide, land degradation, desertification, soil erosion, soil quality depletion, they all are identified to be somewhere related to each other. Almost all of them are there in our syllabus. But I just want to take up a question that has been asked in examination, and it talks about how do we take. So it is how I might be just manipulating the language of the question, but I'm taking them as sample, right? So how are soil acidic or alkaline characteristics relates to its fertility? Acidic, alkaline, acidic, leaching, meteorization, alkaline, calcification. You have to talk about pH value, which justifies soil to be acidic with the lowest pH value, neutral with the moderate range, and alkaline with the highest pH value. The cation exchange capacity in the soil that regulates the pH value, which determines three different types of soil: acidic, neutral, and alkaline. Neutral soil is considered to be fertile. So the question is asking how are the soil acidic and alkaline characteristics relates to its fertility. So in a general expression, we can easily write that if the soil is acidic or it is alkaline, it is infertile. Like when I talk about Solon chalks, we geographer use that term. Otherwise, the technical term is alkaline soil. The Solon chalks are infertile patches. The Solon chalks are identified to be the patches which cannot be utilized for cultivation. But of late, we have started cultivating helophytic varieties of crops. Similarly, acidic soil is infertile because they have got aluminium and iron oxides and their pH value is very low. But then this is the soil that we require for the traditional plantation, barring the exception of tea. If I talk about rubber, I talk about spices, I talk about cocoa, I talk about coffee, I actually require acidic soil. So think about it. You are writing an answer on soil geography, which is part and parcel of biogeography syllabus. But if you're answering this question hardcore, the regimes that facilitate soil formation, you have to write your answer from that perspective. You have to add in the pH value. But because you have to judge how the acidic and alkaline characteristics of soil determines its fertility, you are roping in your answer, you are building up your content from agriculture geography, because ultimately soil goes up with the crop cultivation. I think I'm making sense, class. You have to understand it very clearly that nothing goes in isolation within a topic or between the topics. You have to develop that integration. And I think it comes very convenient, it comes very evident, it comes very spontaneous. You don't need to take efforts to comprehend it, that I can integrate only when I am aware of each one of the head individually. I think I'm making very clear sense. So you have to understand that the complete comprehension of syllabus is a must. And I don't want to halt here. I just want to take up some of the questions that are coming up from general studies perspective for that also, because I always say geography is that optional. which goes with 350 to 380 marks in general studies main. So to prove that, I have just taken, and again with the class notes, to give you understanding that we don't go missing on these. The question that was asked in general studies main examination, island arcs. Island arcs or festoons of Philippines, Japan are of similar origin, that kind of a question. We in geomorphology, oceanography talks about island arcs. Isles, Keys, small group of islands, Keys, Florida Keys, Eoit, largely related to rivers, lakes, archipelago, group of islands. And when I talk about island arc, even if I'm writing answer on general studies, French, where you have created subduction, so accretional wedge, and volcanic island arcs. As we can see with Philippines, Japan, very good examples, Indonesia. I have purposefully incorporated pages of our class notes to prove this point. So enough of the talking about the physical geography. I have taken purposefully all 5 heads one by one into the consideration. You will say no specific mention of oceanography. I'll say island arc comes from oceanography. So it comes up very clearly, all 5 is covered. Now, if I have to talk about that same integration, which comes up with human geography, I have selected some questions of last 2 years. I just want to prove that out. Try to see this question. Human Development Index has brought a paradigm shift in the way people think about development process. And in 2020, we have got the question which was talking about HDI's limitation. So Human Development Index has brought a paradigm shift in the way people think about development, right? How do I write this answer? I know all of us are aware of the fact that Human Development Index is something that is the indicator of the development, and we largely judge out the level of knowledge, level of living, etc. as the indicator that is related to it. I just want to open up one notes that will give you the understanding of how to go about it. Quality of life and well-being. And why it is so that we have taken up change in the paradigm as a 2020 report as base. I just zoom it. Planetary and social imbalances reinforces themselves. We are for the first time incorporating planetary pressure adjusted HDI. And you can easily notice that it is a defined printed notes that you get along with your class notes, which makes you understand how to integrate the content building. Ultimately, it is for you to take up your notes and develop out the snippet. But if I am answering the question on how people's perception about development have changed in due course of time, it is reflected in the change in the HDI table itself. And that very clearly justifies that I cannot write HDI only on the parameters of 3 indexes that are there. I have to talk about PHDI, planetary adjusted HDI. And as our syllabus talks about quality of life, we largely relate it to quality of life. This integration is what is desired, and this is what I am continuously insisting. There is a separate topic in your class syllabus which talks about quality of life, well-being. Then there is a separate topic which reads about HDI, because HDI is written in your syllabus of perspectives and development of human geography. As soon as you take quality of life with HDI, you have written excellent answer on how people's perception about human development have modified. I think I'm making sense. If I ask you to see this question, which is again coming from an integrative kind of a thing, 2020, human ecology. Human ecology is the study of mutual relationship of people and their environment, both natural and social, discuss in details using ecological concept. Ecological concept. Humans are omnivores. Humans have been example of divergent evolution. Human ecology is excellent case of ecological adaptations, full-fledged topic of our syllabus in environment geography that is related to extractive industries and reproductive industries. And here go, you have got the major environmental regions, 12 of them. You can certainly select out few of them to justify the answer. So using ecological concept as your introductory part, and then you are getting on to the development. Are you understanding? This is where you are integrating hardcore biogeography to economic geography. Integration, again, that is the reason I'm such a vocal supporter of integration. Integration is a big thing. And I have completely based this webinar on the term integration, which I have written more than thrice already. See the question which is coming up from the economic part of our syllabus. A large-scale global shift in manufacturing is the outcome of deindustrialization in developed world. It is called agglomeration diseconomies. We call them agglomeration diseconomy. The concept was given to us by Ishad. In the classical approaches of industrial development, Ishad was the scholar who propounded the concept of substitution, right? Okay, I continue to read the question. Matched by industrialization in developing world, analyze the statement. You have to actually take the support of World Bank's assessment that the global economic node has shifted east. Because you need to understand very clearly that Western world saturated of their resource, Western world identified of manpower, they are in the old age cohort dominantly. I don't have that much of the market potentials, labor force is difficult, I don't have manpower, and I come to developing world, I have got everything that is favorable. So all the branded footwear is marking their genesis in Vietnam. All the major branded wearing apparel has got their production grounds in Bangladesh, in Thailand. Why that is the case? It is the case because deindustrialization of developed world is matched with industrialization of developing world. How I create out the answer? I create out the answer with my mental frame of concepts of industrial theories. And you have to quote the example by analyzing the given statement. So prove it. China is a manufacturing hub, it's okay. But I'm quoting example of Vietnam and Bangladesh surpassing China because I'm more taking into account the large scale global shift. Of course, COVID 2 years or so have been a setback. And the effect of it, we are having that ripples even right now with Shanghai not on the track with the complete reassumption of the global trade. There have been so many ambitious programs that have been halted or have been delayed. We are aware of it. So you can quote China also. It's not that you cannot, but then going beyond China also, we have got the example. I hope you are understanding. It's not geography is everything and everything is geography. Any one of us coming from any discipline will have something that we already are aware of in this discipline. That is the benefit of it. And if I just try to take the another question, it's 2020 question that I have included here. Where economic growth is sustained over a long period, its indices work towards progressive integration of space economy, elucidate. One-time reading, it seems so difficult. If you try to look at it from this perspective, I think those who have done the study of geography, basic syllabus, they are making sense, and those who have not, do not worry. This question is directly derived from what we learn in our regional geography. I hope I have given you a very clear perspective that geography, no eyewash, is a very detailed syllabus. But this detailed syllabus involves so much of integration that it is somewhere manageable, and time and again, year after year, the result has proved the same. You just need to be understanding that this optional of mine is requiring me to have a balance. Let me use the term again. I'm after this term today. It again requires me to be in integration to that very typical humanities, which goes descriptive, and sciences, which goes somewhere with the scientific explanation. Geography comes out to be a semi-scientific discipline. So take a rational approach and we'll get going with the classes that we have decided. 21st, the morning session, which is offline. 5th of July, afternoon session, which is offline again. And 5th of July again, evening session, that is hybrid, that goes online and offline combined. Mind it, when you are on the online mode, you are entitled to everything as the soft version, whether it is the classes which is live online or it is the notes that will be there on your portal. If you are in the offline mode, then you are attending the physical classes and you are entitled to the physical set of notes. It goes very obvious kind of a thing. Switching over, that you started with online, you want to shift to offline, vice versa, can be considered, but under certain circumstances, conditions apply. So take a rational decision and decide out on the batch time that you want to take up. And yes, as I communicated earlier also, the third batch is for the first time we have introduced, and it is keeping in mind the time problem that many of you are facing. Bye-bye from my side for this time. I'll be again meeting you on a virtual webinar, specifically focusing on the answer writing. It will be targeting those students who are aware of the content matter but are struggling with attaining marks. Absolutely to you. Something as a surprise element. Bye-bye. Happy learning to all of you. Take care.